Here's your special meal. I know your kind can't afford anything better, so this moldy sandwich should be perfect for someone who doesn't belong with decent people," Jessica sneered, slamming the plastic tray onto Damon Richards' seat table. The sandwich inside was visibly moldy, green spots crawling across stale bread like a science experiment gone wrong. Damon looked up from his laptop, taking in the flight attendant's smug expression. Around him, passengers turned to stare. The businessman in 11A lowered his newspaper. A teenager across the aisle reached for her phone. She stood there, arms crossed, waiting for his reaction, waiting for him to explode, to give her the satisfaction of calling security. Instead, Damon simply nodded and examined the moldy bread with the calm precision of a scientist. Have you ever been so completely underestimated that the person doing it had no idea they were about to end their own career? Flight time to Atlanta. 2 hours, 47 minutes remaining. The moldy sandwich sat between them like evidence in a courtroom. Green spores dotted the bread like tiny accusations. Damon lifted one corner with his napkin, studying it as if it held secrets. "Is there a problem, sir?" Jessica's voice carried that particular tone flight attendants reserved for difficult passengers. She emphasized "sir" like it was a foreign word she'd rather not use. Around them, the cabin had gone quiet. Business travelers pretended to read while straining to listen. A mother pulled her daughter closer, sensing the tension. "No problem at all," Damon said softly. His voice held no anger, no indignation, just calm observation. "Just wondering about food safety protocols." Jessica's smile turned sharper. "Well, maybe if you'd flown first class, you'd get first-class treatment." She gestured at his jeans and Stanford hoodie with obvious disdain. "But economy passengers get economy service." In seat 14C, 17-year-old Maya Chen fumbled for her phone. She'd witnessed discrimination before, but never this blatant. Her finger hovered over Instagram Live. "Some people," Jessica continued, raising her voice just enough, "think they deserve special treatment everywhere they go." Her eyes swept the cabin, gathering silent supporters among passengers who looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Maya hit record. Instagram Live, 47 viewers. "Y'all seeing this?" Maya whispered into her phone. Comments started flowing immediately. "OMG, is this really happening? Get her name tag. This is so messed up." Damon reached into his laptop bag with measured movements. His fingers brushed against a distinctive black credit card. American Express Centurion. The card disappeared back into his wallet before Jessica noticed. "Flight attendant," he said quietly. "Could I have your name, please?" "Jessica Hartwell," she replied with a smirk, tapping her name tag. "Feel free to complain to customer service. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your concerns." The word concerns dripped with mockery. 2 hours, 31 minutes to landing. Maya's live stream was gaining traction. Viewer count, 127. Screenshots were already circulating on Twitter. Someone had started the hashtag #Skyline, Airlines Racism. Head flight attendant Carol Mitchell approached from the galley. At 42, she'd seen every type of passenger complaint. Her practiced smile faltered when she saw the moldy sandwich. "Is everything all right here?" Carol's tone was professional but guarded. "Your colleague served me this." Damon indicated the sandwich without touching it. "I'm trying to understand if this is standard service." Carol glanced at Jessica, who shrugged. "He's been difficult since boarding," Jessica lied smoothly, "complaining about everything." "Sir," Carol said, her voice taking on an edge, "we can't accommodate every passenger preference. If you're unhappy with the meal service, I'm not unhappy. Damon interrupted gently. I'm documenting. Something in his tone made Carol pause, but Jessica stepped forward, emboldened. He's probably going to post some angry review online, Jessica said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. You know how they are. The phrase hung in the air like poison gas. Maya's viewer count hit 347. Comments were exploding. Did she just say, you know how they are? Someone get the airline's Twitter. This man is so calm, I would have lost it. In seat 11A, business executive Robert Park discreetly started an audio recording on his phone. He'd flown over 1 million miles and had never witnessed such blatant discrimination. Damon's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. All Atlanta executives confirmed. He glanced at the message, then at Jessica's name tag, memorizing her employee ID number visible beneath her name. Ma'am, he addressed Carol directly, what's your full name and position? Carol Mitchell, head flight attendant. And I need to ask you to lower your voice. I haven't raised my voice, Damon observed correctly. Jessica crossed her arms, blocking the aisle. Her body language screamed authority she didn't actually possess. Maybe you should have thought about meal preferences before booking the cheapest ticket available. More passengers were pulling out phones now. Maya's stream hit 623 viewers. The cabin had become an impromptu courtroom, with Jessica as both prosecutor and defendant. Damon pulled out his phone and made a brief call. Yes, it's Damon Richards. I need the Atlanta office prepared for a 4 p.m. arrival. His voice was quiet, but several passengers caught the words. Jessica snorted. Very important phone call, I'm sure. When Damon hung up, his phone showed 17 missed calls from a contact labeled Skyline Corporate Relations. He'd silenced the calls, but the notification was visible to anyone looking closely. A magazine slipped from his laptop bag, Fortune 500's CEOs Under 45 issue. The cover showed various executives, though Damon's face wasn't clearly visible in the fallen magazine. Jessica didn't notice. She was too busy enjoying her perceived victory. Some people, she announced to the cabin, just don't understand how airlines work. 2 hours, 18 minutes remaining. Maya's live stream had exploded to 891 viewers. Screenshots were spreading across social media platforms faster than the airline's crisis management team could track. But Jessica remained oblivious, drunk on her imagined power over a passenger she'd completely misjudged. Damon simply took notes in a leather portfolio, his handwriting neat and precise. Each word Jessica spoke was being recorded, not just by Maya's phone, but by the detailed documentation of someone who understood exactly how corporate accountability worked. The moldy sandwich sat between them, waiting to become evidence in a case that would reshape everything. 2 hours, 18 minutes remaining. Flight Service Manager Robert Thompson's radio crackled to life. Code yellow in economy, seat 12C. Passenger complaints are escalating. Robert sighed, clipping the radio to his belt. At 51, he'd handled thousands of difficult passengers. This would be routine. Side with the crew, de-escalate, move on. He approached with the confident stride of someone who believed he held all the power. Sir, I'm Robert Thompson, Flight Service Manager. His voice carried practiced authority. I understand you're having issues with our meal service. Maya's live stream viewer count hit 1,247. Comments were flooding in faster than she could read them. Manager's here. This is about to get worse. Why is the passenger staying so calm? Screenshot everything. No issues, Damon replied evenly. Just questions about food safety standards. Robert glanced at the moldy sandwich, his expression unchanging. In his mind, the situation was simple. Upset passengers, defensive crew, standard procedure. Sir, while I understand your disappointment, creating a disturbance over meal quality is unacceptable. Robert's tone suggested this conversation was already over. We need to maintain order for all passengers. Jessica practically glowed with vindication. Carol nodded approvingly. They were presenting a united front against this troublemaker in 12C. If you continue this behavior, Robert continued, I'll have to request security assistance upon landing. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire about to explode. 2 hours, 3 minutes remaining. Maya's stream exploded past 2,000 viewers. Someone had shared it to TikTok. Screenshots were ricocheting across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The hashtag has Skyline. Airlines racism was trending in Atlanta, but the crew remained completely unaware of the digital storm building around them. Atlanta Ground Control, Robert spoke into his radio. We may need passenger assistance at Gate B7. Unruly individual in 12C. Damon's phone buzzed with another text, this time from Skyline Corporate, urgent. He glanced at it briefly, then returned his attention to Robert. Mr. Thompson, Damon said quietly. What's your employee ID number? Excuse me? For my documentation. I like to be thorough. Robert's eyes narrowed. Sir, you're not in a position to make demands. The businessman in 11A, Robert Park, had been recording audio for 20 minutes. His frequent flyer status meant he understood airline hierarchy. What he was witnessing felt like watching someone step off a cliff in slow motion. This is escalating unnecessarily, Park said, loud enough for others to hear. The gentleman hasn't raised his voice once. Jessica spun toward him. Sir, please don't interfere with crew operations. I'm observing crew operations, Park replied coolly, and documenting them. Now multiple passengers were openly recording. The situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control, except possibly Damon's. 1 hour, 52 minutes remaining. Maya's stream peaked at 2,947 viewers. Screenshots had reached local news outlets. Atlanta's WSB TV social media manager was already pulling clips for the evening broadcast. Someone had identified the flight. Skyline Airlines Flight 447, Atlanta bound. Damon's phone showed 23 missed calls from Skyline Corporate Relations. The calls kept coming every few minutes, but he'd silenced them completely. A Fortune magazine slipped further from his bag, revealing more of the cover story. Tech Titans Reshaping America. Several CEO headshots were visible, though Damon's face remained obscured. Jessica stepped closer, her voice dropping to what she thought was a private level. You know what your problem is? You people always think you're owed something special. The phrase, you people, hit the cabin like a thunderclap. Maya's comment section exploded. She did not just say that. Get this to the news now. This man's self-control is incredible. Carol grabbed Jessica's arm, finally sensing they'd crossed a line. But it was too late. The words were recorded, live-streamed, and spread virally. Ma'am, Damon said to Carol, I'd like your supervisor's contact information. I am the supervisor for this section, Carol replied defensively. Your supervisor, Damon clarified patiently. Robert stepped forward. Sir, you're disrupting this flight. I'm authorizing a security escort upon landing. Damon pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact labeled Chen Victoria, CEO. His thumb hovered over the call button, but he didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, he opened his email and began typing. The recipients list was extensive. legal@skylinair.com, customer relations @skylinair, executive board @skylinair.com. Subject line, incident report, flight 447, documentation attached. He began uploading photos of the moldy sandwich, screenshots of the crew's behavior, and audio recordings from his phone. 1 hour, 34 minutes remaining. The teenager across the aisle gasped. Maya's live stream had hit 3,400 viewers and was still climbing. Major news outlets were now monitoring the hashtag. CNN's social media team had pulled the video. Fox News was preparing a segment. The story was breaking in real time, faster than any corporate crisis management team could respond. But inside the cabin, the crew remained blissfully unaware they were destroying their own careers minute by minute. "Some passengers," Jessica announced loudly enough for the entire economy section to hear, "think making a scene will get them special treatment." She was playing to an audience she thought supported her. A few passengers nodded uncomfortably, but most looked horrified. Damon's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Skyline calling. It was a text from Maya, 14C. "Sir, I'm streaming this live. 3,400 people watched. Do you want me to stop?" Damon glanced back at Maya, then typed a response. "Please continue. Truth needs witnesses." Maya's heart raced as she read his reply on her stream. The comments went wild. "He knows he's being filmed. This man is playing chess while they're playing checkers. Something big is about to happen." 1 hour, 18 minutes remaining. Robert made another radio call. Atlanta security confirmed passenger assistance needed at B7. Individual refusing to comply with crew instructions. At Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, security personnel began preparing for a difficult passenger escort. They had no idea they were about to become part of a viral story that would reshape airline industry standards. Damon closed his laptop with deliberate precision. In his leather portfolio, he'd filled 3 pages with notes. Names, times, exact quotes, witness information. Everything he needed for what came next. But he still hadn't revealed who he really was. That card would be played at exactly the right moment. Jessica stood triumphant, completely unaware that she'd just documented her own termination in front of thousands of witnesses. The plane continued its descent toward Atlanta, carrying with it a story that would land far harder than the aircraft itself. 1 hour, 2 minutes remaining. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the plane began its final descent phase. Passengers started gathering their belongings, but nobody in economy was paying attention to overhead bins. All eyes remained fixed on seat 12C. Maya's live stream had peaked at 4,200 viewers. The chat was moving so fast she could barely follow it. "This is the calmest person I've ever seen. Plot twist incoming, I can feel it. Why isn't he angry? Something's not right. He's documenting everything like a lawyer." Damon closed his leather portfolio with the same precision he'd used for everything else. 3 pages of meticulous notes. Names, employee ID numbers, exact timestamps, direct quotes. Then he did something that made Jessica's confident smirk falter slightly. He smiled. Not the angry, sarcastic smile of someone planning revenge. Something else entirely. The quiet smile of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. "Mr. Thompson," Damon said, rising from his seat with fluid grace. "Before we land, I'd like to clarify something important." Robert's hand moved instinctively toward his radio. "Sir, please remain seated until we reach the gate." "This will just take a moment," Damon replied, stepping into the aisle with deliberate calm. He walked toward the front galley, his movements unhurried but purposeful. The entire economy section watched in complete silence. Maya adjusted her phone angle to capture whatever was about to unfold. Several passengers leaned forward in their seats. The businessman in 11A stopped pretending to read his newspaper entirely. 52 minutes remaining. At the galley counter, Damon reached into his jacket pocket with theatrical precision. Jessica tensed, expecting some kind of confrontation or outburst. Carol moved closer to the intercom, ready to call for backup. Instead, Damon placed a single business card on the counter, face down. The simple action carried more weight than any shouting match could have. "I think," he said quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed cabin, "there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about who I am." The pause stretched for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for every passenger to hold their breath. He flipped the card over. The silence that followed was deafening. The card read, "Damon Richards, Chief Executive Officer, Tech Forward Industries, Fortune 500, number 47. Jessica's face went through a remarkable transformation. Confident smirk to confusion to dawning comprehension to growing horror in the span of 5 seconds. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. Carol's eyes widened as she read the card, then reread it, as if the words might change. Robert's radio slipped from his nerveless fingers, clattering to the galley floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the cabin. "Tech Forward Industries," Damon continued in the same measured tone he'd used throughout the flight, "is currently Skyline Airlines' largest corporate account. We book approximately 1,200 flights monthly across all our divisions." Maya's live stream exploded. The viewer count jumped to 5,200 in seconds, then kept climbing. "Holy shit, he's a CEO! They're so screwed! Plot twist of the century! I knew something was up!" "Our annual contract with Skyline Airlines," Damon continued, pulling out his phone to display official documentation, "represents $3.8 million in revenue. That's roughly 28% of your Atlanta hub's business travel volume." The numbers hit the crew like physical blows. Jessica's legs seemed to give out slightly. She gripped the galley counter for support, her knuckles white. I didn't," she stammered, her voice barely audible. "You didn't need to know my title," Damon replied with devastating calm, "to treat me with basic human dignity. 47 minutes remaining." The revelation was spreading beyond Maya's stream now. Screenshots of Damon's business card were ricocheting across social media platforms. News outlets were scrambling to verify his identity. Robert finally found his voice, though it came out as a croak. "Mr. Richards, we had no idea who you were." "That's exactly the problem, Mr. Thompson," Damon said, his tone remaining professorial. "Your treatment of passengers shouldn't depend on their job title or bank account balance." He pulled out his phone and showed them the screen. 29 missed calls from Skyline Corporate Relations. 17 text messages marked urgent. The notifications kept coming every few minutes. "I believe your executives have been trying to reach me for the past hour," he observed with understated irony. Carol was frantically scrolling through her own phone, probably trying to access the passenger manifest or contact her supervisors. But it was far too late to matter now. "I should mention," Damon continued, "that I was traveling economy today as part of an unannounced service quality evaluation. Tech Forward conducts these assessments annually with all our vendor partners." The phrase vendor partners hit the crew like a sledgehammer. They weren't just dealing with a passenger complaint anymore. This was a corporate audit that had gone catastrophically wrong. Jessica finally managed to form a complete sentence.
Sir, if I had known who you were...
If you had known what, exactly? Damon asked, tilting his head slightly. That discriminating against passengers might have consequences. That your actions represent your employer? The questions hung in the air like accusations. 42 minutes remaining. Maya's stream was now being watched by over 6,400 people. Major news networks were monitoring the hashtag. CNN's social media team had pulled clips. Fox Business was preparing a segment about corporate accountability. The story was breaking in real time across multiple platforms, spreading faster than any crisis management team could contain. But Damon wasn't finished. He pulled out his laptop and opened a presentation that made Robert's face go completely ashen. Slide 1. Tech Forward Industries, Skyline Airlines. Partnership, monthly flights, 1,200 annual revenue, $3.8 million, employee travel accounts, 15,000 plus contract renewal date, 30 days. Current partnership, 5 years. Slide 2, corporate vendor requirements. Section 12.4, zero tolerance for discrimination. Immediate contract termination for cause. 48-hour notification period required. Legal liability provisions included. Our legal team, Damon explained. Advancing to the next slide, included very specific language about discrimination in our vendor agreements. Today's incident constitutes what we legally define as cause for immediate termination. The galley had become a courtroom, and Damon was simultaneously prosecutor, judge, and jury. Robert was frantically texting someone, probably his district supervisor or crisis management. But Damon's phone was already ringing. He glanced at the caller ID, then answered on speaker. Mr. Richards, this is Victoria Chen, CEO of Skyline Airlines. I've been monitoring this situation through our social media crisis team. The crew's faces went from pale to gray to a sickly green color. Ms. Chen, Damon replied with perfect composure. I was wondering when you'd call. Sir, I want to personally apologize for what you've experienced today. I've been watching the live stream footage for the past 20 minutes, and this behavior is absolutely unacceptable. Maya's chat went completely insane. The airline CEO is calling him. This is better than any movie. These flight attendants are done. Justice in real time. 38 minutes remaining. Victoria Chen's voice continued over the phone speaker, clear enough for the entire galley area to hear. Mr. Richards, our crisis management team has been tracking this incident since it went viral. We're prepared to take immediate and comprehensive action. What kind of action are we discussing? Damon asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. Full internal investigation, immediate suspension of all involved crew members, comprehensive review of our discrimination policies, and mandatory retraining for all customer-facing staff. Jessica was openly crying now, not tears of remorse, but the desperate tears of someone watching their career implode in real time, broadcast to thousands of strangers. Ms. Chen, Damon said, consulting his laptop screen, Tech Forward's vendor agreement requires more than internal reviews. Section 12.4 specifically outlines our response protocols for discrimination incidents. There was a meaningful pause on the line. Are you saying you're prepared to invoke the contract termination clause? Chen asked carefully. I'm saying I have exactly 48 hours to make that decision. Right now, I'm documenting everything for our legal team's comprehensive review. The power dynamic had completely, irrevocably reversed. 3 crew members who'd spent over an hour systematically belittling a passenger were now facing career-ending consequences from that exact same passenger. But Damon still had one more revelation. 34 minutes remaining. He pulled out a manila folder from his laptop bag. Inside were printed emails, boarding passes, and what appeared to be official tech-forward documentation. "For the record," he said, showing the crew his first-class boarding pass, "I purchased and chose to sit in economy specifically to observe service standards. This was a planned, systematic evaluation." Jessica's face completely crumpled. You were testing us this entire time?" "I was observing how you treat passengers when you believe there are no consequences for your actions." Maya's viewer count hit 7,500. The story was now trending on Twitter nationwide. Hashtag Skyline Airlines. Racism had over 85,000 mentions and climbing. But the most devastating revelation was still coming. Damon showed them his phone screen one more time. A text thread with someone labeled Maya 14C. "I've been in direct communication with your live stream witness for the past hour," he said. "I specifically asked her to continue recording because discrimination thrives in darkness." Maya nearly dropped her phone in shock. She'd been texting with the CEO of a Fortune 500 company without realizing it. "Every discriminatory word you've spoken," Damon continued methodically, "every escalating action, every threat you've made has been documented by multiple witnesses and broadcast live to thousands of people." The crew stood completely frozen, finally understanding the full magnitude of their situation. 30 minutes to landing. "Ms. Chen," Damon addressed the phone directly, "I'll be making my final decision about Tech Forward's continued partnership with Skyline based entirely on your company's response to this documented incident." "What would you consider an appropriate and adequate response?" Chen asked, her voice tight with barely controlled crisis management mode. Damon looked at Jessica, whose aviation career was likely over, at Carol, who'd actively enabled the discrimination, at Robert, who'd threatened him with security escort. "Accountability," he said simply. "Real, measurable, systemic change, not just public relations apologies." The plane was descending rapidly toward Atlanta now, but the real crash had already happened. 3 crew members had systematically destroyed their own careers while attempting to humiliate a passenger they'd completely and catastrophically misjudged. And every devastating moment had been broadcast live to thousands of witnesses watching justice unfold in real time. 25 minutes to landing. The galley had transformed into a corporate war room at 35,000 feet. Damon opened his laptop fully, revealing a comprehensive presentation that made the crew's situation crystal clear. "Ms. Chen," he said into the phone, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to boardroom negotiations, "let me share some specific data with your executive team." His screen displayed a detailed financial breakdown that would make any CEO pay attention. Tech Forward Industries. Skyline Partnership. Impact. Annual revenue, $3.8 million, 2024 actual. Monthly bookings, 1,200 flights across all divisions. Employee accounts, 15,247 active corporate travelers, Atlanta hub. Dependency, 28% of total business traffic. Contract renewal date, 30 days remaining. Partnership duration, 5 years, 0 incidents until today. Average booking value, $3,167 per flight. These numbers, Damon continued with clinical precision, represent more than revenue streams. They represent trust, reputation, and corporate partnership. Today's incident has fundamentally damaged that relationship. Maya's live stream had exploded to 8,400 viewers. News outlets were now actively monitoring the feed. Screenshots were spreading across LinkedIn, where Tech Forward's corporate reputation carried significant weight in tech industry circles. Robert fumbled for his radio, his hands visibly shaking. "Atlanta Control, please disregard previous passenger assistance request for seat 12C. Too late. The damage was already cascading through multiple corporate systems. 22 minutes remaining. Victoria Chen's voice came through the speaker with newfound urgency. "Mr. Richards, what would constitute adequate remediation from your perspective?" Damon clicked to his next slide with the precision of a surgeon. Section 12.4, Vendor Discrimination Protocol. Zero Tolerance Policy. Immediate Contract Review. Triggered documentation requirements. Video evidence, witness statements, incident reports. Response timeline, 48 hours maximum for initial response. Remediation standards, systemic change, not merely individual discipline. Legal liability, $500,000 penalty clause for contract breach. Reputation clauses, social media monitoring and response requirements. Our legal team included these provisions specifically because discrimination incidents create both immediate reputational damage and long-term financial liability, Damon explained methodically. Today's incident meets every single criterion for immediate contract termination. Jessica was hyperventilating now, gripping the galley counter. Carol had gone completely silent, staring at her phone in apparent shock. Robert was frantically typing messages, probably alerting his entire chain of command to the unfolding crisis. But Damon wasn't finished with his corporate presentation. Financial Impact Analysis. Slide 3. Lost Tech Forward Account. 3.8 M annually. Associated Tech Partnerships at risk. Additional 1.2 M. Stock price impact. Estimated 2 to 3% decline within 24 hours. Legal exposure. Discrimination lawsuit. Potential damages. Reputation damage. Quantified through social media reach metrics. Industry influence. 47. Fortune 500 connections affected. Ms. Chen, Damon continued, our partnership extends far beyond direct booking revenue. Tech Forward's travel recommendations influence 12 other Fortune 500 companies in the tech sector. Today's documented incident puts approximately $5 million in annual revenue at immediate risk. The numbers hit the crew like physical hammer blows. Maya's chat was exploding with corporate accountability advocates and social justice supporters. CEO bringing receipts and data. This is how you handle systematic discrimination. Economic pressure creates real change. Justice through corporate accountability. 19 minutes remaining. Chen's voice carried new urgency and what sounded like panic. Mr. Richards, I want to be completely transparent about our immediate response plan. I'm listening, Damon replied, though his tone suggested deep skepticism about corporate promises. Effective immediately upon landing. Jessica Hartwell is terminated for discriminatory conduct and violation of company policy. Carol Mitchell is suspended without pay pending mandatory sensitivity training and performance review. Robert Thompson is being demoted from management position and required to complete comprehensive bias interruption certification. The crew heard their professional fates decided in real time, broadcast to thousands of viewers. But Damon shook his head slowly. Individual discipline doesn't address systemic issues, Ms. Chen. What about comprehensive policy changes? He clicked to another slide that clearly outlined his expectations. Required systemic changes. Zero-tolerance discrimination policy, with immediate termination procedures. Real-time passenger feedback system, accessible via mobile app. Quarterly bias. Interruption training for all customer-facing staff. Monthly diversity and inclusion metrics, published publicly. Independent Oversight Committee, including community representatives, $100,000 annual diversity scholarship fund. Partnership with civil rights organizations for ongoing consultation. These aren't suggestions or requests, Damon clarified with steel in his voice. They're non-negotiable requirements for contract continuation. 16 minutes remaining. Victoria Chen paused, clearly consulting with her crisis management team in the background. Mr. Richards, implementing those changes system-wide would require significant resources, budget allocation, and timeline adjustments across our entire operation. The timeline is completely non-negotiable, Damon replied firmly. Tech Forward's contract renewal decision happens in exactly 30 days. These changes must be operational and demonstrably effective before that deadline. Maya's viewer count hit 9,200. The story was now trending simultaneously across Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. Corporate executives across multiple industries were watching this real-time case study in accountability. Robert finally found his voice, though it came out as a whisper. Sir, surely you understand that corporate policies of this magnitude take months or even years to implement properly. Damon turned his calm, devastating gaze on Robert. Mr. Thompson, you and your crew had absolutely no problem implementing discrimination quickly and efficiently for over an hour. I expect exactly the same speed and efficiency for implementing equality and justice. The observation was devastating in its simplicity and logic. Corporate leverage. Slide 4. Damon displayed Tech Forward's broader influence network. Board positions held by executives. 23 major corporations. Annual Atlanta Tech. Summit. 50,000 industry attendees. Corporate partnerships affecting airline vendor selections. 15 companies. Social media reach. 2.3 million followers across all platforms. Industry awards and recognition programs. 12 annual events. Venture capital connections. $2.8 billion in influenced funding. Ms. Chen, Tech Forward's influence extends far beyond our direct travel budget. Our executive team's recommendations carry substantial weight with dozens of other major corporate accounts. The implication was crystal clear. This incident could trigger a massive cascade of contract losses across the industry. 13 minutes remaining, Chen's voice returned with new determination and urgency. Mr. Richards, I am prepared to authorize immediate implementation of all your requirements, but I need your commitment to work collaboratively with us during this transition period. That depends entirely on measurable, documented results, Damon replied without hesitation. Corporate words and promises are insufficient. I need concrete, verifiable actions within 48 hours. He clicked to his final slide. 48-hour, non-negotiable requirements. Public apology, acknowledging systemic discrimination issues. Detailed explanation of fired crew member terminations and reasoning. Complete new policy draft, with specific implementation timeline. Community Oversight Committee formation with named participants. $100,000 donation to racial equality and civil rights organizations. Third-party audit of current discrimination complaint procedures. These deliverables are completely non-negotiable, Damon stated with finality. Failure to meet any single requirement triggers immediate contract termination and public disclosure of this incident. Jessica was openly sobbing now, understanding that her career in aviation was definitively over. But Damon wasn't targeting her personally anymore. This had evolved into something much larger: systemic change. 10 minutes remaining, Maya's live stream was approaching 10,000 viewers. Major news networks were preparing prime-time segments. The story was becoming a real-time case study in corporate accountability that would be studied in business schools. "Mr. Richards," Chen said carefully, "your requirements are extensive and demanding, but we're fully committed to meeting every single one of them." "Commitment is insufficient," Damon replied bluntly. "I need execution, documentation, and verification." He pulled out a thick legal document from his briefcase. "This is Tech Forward's vendor termination notice, pre-signed by our legal team and ready for immediate filing. I can submit it within minutes of landing if necessary." The document was real, official, and terrifying in its potential implications. Robert's phone was buzzing constantly now. Probably every executive in Skyline's corporate hierarchy desperately trying to understand how a routine flight had become a full-scale corporate crisis. 7 minutes remaining. "Ms. Chen," Damon continued, "I want to be absolutely clear about something important. This isn't about personal revenge or individual punishment. It's about corporate accountability and systemic change. Your crew's behavior today reflects deep-rooted issues that require comprehensive solutions." Maya's comments were now dominated by corporate leaders, diversity advocates, and business school professors. This is masterclass in using economic privilege for social justice. Economic pressure creates lasting systemic change. More Fortune 500 CEOs need to see this approach. Documentation and evidence-based accountability. Chen's voice carried new resolve. "Mr. Richards, you have my personal guarantee and the full weight of Skyline's executive board that every requirement will be met within your specified timeline." "Personal guarantees from corporate executives are historically worthless," Damon replied with brutal honesty. "I need legally binding commitments with specific penalty clauses and enforcement mechanisms." He was operating at a level of corporate negotiation that the crew couldn't even begin to comprehend. 4 minutes to touchdown. The plane was on final approach, but the real landing had already happened. 3 crew members had systematically crashed their careers, while a Fortune 500 CEO had methodically dismantled their employer's discriminatory practices. "Final offer, Ms. Chen," Damon said with finality. "Meet every requirement within 48 hours, implement all systemic changes within 30 days, and Tech Forward continues the partnership. Fail any single component, and we terminate immediately with full public disclosure." "Completely agreed," Chen replied without hesitation. "Excellent," Damon said, closing his laptop with satisfaction. "I'll expect your first detailed progress report tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern." Maya's stream had become a real-time masterclass in how individual discrimination incidents could trigger massive corporate accountability measures. Jessica sat slumped in the galley, finally understanding that her personal prejudice had cost her everything. But more importantly, it had forced an entire corporation to confront its systemic biases. The plane touched down at Atlanta carrying more than just passengers. It carried a story that would reshape industry standards for years to come. Touchdown. Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International Airport. As the aircraft rolled toward the gate, Damon gathered his materials with the same calm precision he'd maintained throughout the entire flight. He'd successfully transformed personal humiliation into corporate transformation, using strategic economic leverage to create systemic change that would protect countless future passengers from similar discrimination. The quiet power of strategic thinking had proven infinitely more effective than any angry confrontation ever could. 24 hours later, Skyline Airlines corporate headquarters. Victoria Chen stood before a packed conference room of executives, legal counsel, and crisis management specialists. Her phone showed 47 missed calls from board members, investors, and media outlets. The hashtag Skyline Accountability had exploded overnight, reaching 2.3 million mentions across social platforms. Status report, Chen demanded. Jessica Hartwell's termination is effective immediately, reported HR Director Sarah Kim. Carol Mitchell suspended without pay pending completion of comprehensive bias training. Robert Thompson demoted to senior staff with mandatory certification requirements. But individual consequences were just the beginning. Public accountability, 18 hours after landing. Skyline's official statement appeared across all corporate channels. Skyline Airlines apologizes unreservedly to Mr. Damon Richards and all passengers who witnessed discriminatory behavior on Flight 447. The actions of our crew members violated our core values and federal anti-discrimination laws. We take full responsibility and are implementing immediate systemic changes. The statement included video footage from Maya's live stream, making the discrimination undeniably public. Stock markets responded immediately. Skyline's share price dropped 2.1% in pre-market trading, wiping out $180 million in market value. But something unexpected happened next. Corporate transformation accelerated. Within 36 hours, Skyline had launched the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in aviation history. 1. Zero-tolerance policy. Implementation. Immediate termination for any discriminatory behavior. No warnings, no second chances. Documentation requirements for all passenger interactions. 2. Real-time accountability system. Mobile app, allowing instant passenger feedback. Anonymous reporting mechanisms for crew concerns. Live monitoring by customer service supervisors. 3. Mandatory training revolution. Quarterly bias interruption workshops for all staff. Unconscious bias. Recognition certification required customer service evaluations tied directly to diversity metrics. Maya's platform explodes. The teenager who'd live-streamed the incident gained 340,000 new followers overnight. Her documentation had become a catalyst for industry-wide change. Major news networks featured her footage. The NAACP invited her to speak at their national convention. Harvard Business School requested permission to use her video in case studies. "I just hit record," Maya told CNN. "Mr. Richards did all the real work." Systemic changes. Rollout. Week 1. Skyline partnered with the Southern Poverty Law Center for ongoing consultation. Week 2. A $100,000 scholarship fund established for underrepresented students in hospitality management. Week 3. Independent oversight committee formed, including community leaders, civil rights attorneys, and diversity experts. Month 1. Public diversity metrics dashboard launched, showing real-time data on complaints, resolutions, and staff training completion rates. The ripple effect spreads. Other airlines began proactively implementing similar policies. American Airlines announced enhanced bias training. Delta launched an anonymous discrimination reporting app. United partnered with civil rights organizations for policy consultation. The entire industry was transforming to avoid becoming the next viral discrimination story. Tech Forward's decision. Damon Richards called Victoria Chen exactly 30 days after Flight 447. "Ms. Chen,
I've reviewed your implementation progress. And? Chen asked, her voice tight with anxiety. Tech Forward is renewing our partnership contract. The relief in Chen's voice was audible. Thank you, Mr. Richards. We've learned invaluable lessons.
More importantly, Damon replied, you've created measurable change. That's what matters. Personal transformation. Jessica Hartwell, now unemployed and unemployable in aviation, underwent a profound personal reckoning. She entered therapy, volunteered with diversity organizations, and began speaking at bias recognition seminars. I thought I wasn't racist, she told a community workshop 6 months later. But my actions proved otherwise. Confronting that truth was the hardest thing I've ever done. Her public journey from perpetrator to advocate became part of Skyline's training materials. Industry recognition. The Aviation Industry Association named Skyline's transformation program the gold standard for discrimination prevention. Their policies were adopted by 17 other carriers within 6 months. Wall Street analysts noted something remarkable. Skyline's stock not only recovered, but rose 3.2% above pre-incident levels. Investors valued companies with strong accountability measures. Academic impact. Harvard Business School, Wharton, and Stanford began teaching the Flight 447 case study in their ethics and leadership programs. The incident demonstrated how individual discrimination could trigger systemic corporate change. Business schools worldwide used Maya's footage to illustrate the power of documentation and the speed of social media accountability. Legal precedent. The incident influenced federal transportation policy. The Department of Transportation began requiring airlines to report discrimination complaints and resolutions publicly. Tech Forward's vendor contract language became a template for other Fortune 500 companies seeking to enforce anti-discrimination policies with business partners. The measurement of success. 6 months after Flight 447, Skyline's discrimination complaints dropped 78%. Customer satisfaction scores among passengers of color increased by 34%. Employee diversity training completion reached 100% across all departments. Most importantly, no similar incidents occurred system-wide. Damon Richards had achieved something remarkable, transforming personal humiliation into industry-wide reform through strategic economic pressure, rather than legal action or public outrage. The quiet power of accountability had proven more effective than any lawsuit could have been. 1 year later, Tech Forward Industries' annual conference. Damon Richards stood before 15,000 tech leaders in Atlanta's Georgia World Congress Center. His keynote speech wasn't about artificial intelligence or market disruption. It was about dignity. Real-life stories teach us that power isn't about position, he began. It's about purpose. When we witness injustice, we have a choice: stay silent or create change. In the audience, Maya Chen, now a freshman at Spelman College on a Tech Forward scholarship, live-streamed his speech to 89,000 followers. Her platform had evolved into a powerful voice for corporate accountability. The transformation sparked by Flight 447 had exceeded every expectation. The legacy lives on. Skyline. Airlines became the most diverse major carrier in America. Their bias interruption training program was licensed to 47 companies across multiple industries. Employee satisfaction reached all-time highs. Jessica Hartwell, after completing 200 hours of diversity training, now leads bias recognition workshops for hospitality workers nationwide. Her journey from perpetrator to advocate had become one of the most compelling, touching stories in corporate accountability.
I destroyed my own career through prejudice, she told audiences. But Mr. Richards' response taught me that mistakes can become opportunities for growth. Measuring real change. The numbers spoke volumes. Airline discrimination complaints dropped 67% industry-wide. 23. Fortune 500 companies adopted tech-forward's vendor accountability language. Maya's documentation methods were taught in 156 journalism schools. Skyline's diversity metrics became the gold standard for transportation companies. But the most important measurement was simpler. Passengers of all backgrounds now traveled with dignity. The broader movement. These black stories of quiet resistance had inspired similar accountability efforts across industries. Hotel chains implemented real-time discrimination reporting. Retail companies adopted bias interruption training. Restaurant groups established oversight committees. Economic pressure, it turned out, created lasting change faster than lawsuits or protests. Personal reflections. I could have responded with anger, Damon reflected in interviews. Instead, I chose strategy. Anger fades, systems endure. His approach had become a blueprint for transforming discrimination incidents into opportunities for systemic reform. Maya's documentation proved that individual voices, amplified by technology, could hold corporations accountable in real time. The power of preparation. Damon's success wasn't accidental. Years of experiencing discrimination had taught him to document everything, understand corporate structures, and leverage economic relationships strategically. Preparation meets opportunity, he often said. When discrimination occurs, we must be ready to respond effectively. Values that endure. The Flight 447 incident demonstrated that dignity, documentation, and strategic thinking could overcome institutional bias. It proved that individual actions could trigger systemic transformation. Most importantly, it showed that justice doesn't always require courtrooms. Sometimes it requires boardrooms. Your voice matters. These life stories remind us that change happens when ordinary people refuse to accept discrimination as normal. Every documented incident, every shared video, every corporate contract can become a tool for transformation. Join the movement. Have you witnessed discrimination in your workplace, during travel, or in daily life? Your documentation could prevent others from experiencing the same treatment. Share your story in the comments below. Your experience matters. Your voice can create change. Hit that subscribe button for Black Voices Uncut to see more stories of quiet strength overcoming systemic barriers. Share this video if you believe accountability should have consequences. Like this content if you support using economic pressure to create social change. Together, we can make discrimination too expensive for any business to afford. Because when Black voices remain uncut, systems change. When systems change, everyone benefits. Your story could be next. Your voice could spark the transformation someone else desperately needs. The power is in your hands. Use it.